Now, please let me introduce our next eminent expert, Mr. Rohit Adnani, sir, who will take the session on data and application security. Mr. Rohit Adnani, sir, is an eminent expert in sales with specialization in cybersecurity and data protection, with extensive knowledge of cyber security products and technologies. He provides innovative solutions to help organizations protect their digital assets and combat evolving threats. He's passionate about leveraging cutting edge advancements, and he actively explores AI and generative AI to strengthen security frameworks, which ensures business stays resilient in the digital first era. So thank you so much for finding time from your busy schedule, sir. And we are looking forward to your session most eagerly. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for introducing and the kind words. So, first of all, really appreciating the opportunity given to us to present on this large forum of the learners. And of course, I hope end of this session, you will be able to learn about the criticality of an application security and data security. I prepared this deck considering the foundation of the application security, like how exactly the application security and data security correlate to each other, and where we should, or what kind of solutioning that we should be looking when we have to finalize the approach within the organization, or we have to be a consultant for some other organization to provide our insight about what should be the step one, step two, and three while finalizing the solution around the same. So to start with, a quick background on the agenda. So we're going to discuss about application security. And since the data is related to the applications, therefore I'm starting it, to explain how this application security correlating with the data and generating the data, which needs to be secure, okay? And then we're gonna discuss about what are the top concerns that CISOs has, considering we are, talking uh, distributed environments, we are talking about edge, we are talking about AIs, how really the top concerns of the CISOs are, and how we can really address those. And then we will talking about the importance of shift left approach of application security, which is predominantly in the APIs world, and then the bot adoption. Okay, so we are seeing a lot of things has been now automated with help of chat GPTs. Our security tools are also started, working on the behavioral analysis and feeds from the AI's tool, how it is really adapting the bot, okay, and how these bots can be really, threat for the organization. And then we'll come to the second part of the agenda, which is the data security. So we'll understand the need of the data security, considering, whatever we have been implemented, and then what are the security guiding principles around the data protection. And then we'll be, discussing about few of the common solutions that we can have, and what is the best posture that they can give around the data security. So that's going to be agenda. I'm more than happy to contributing to any questions that you have by end of this session, or if there is something which you think is really need to be answered, you can probably unmute and ask the question, or you can type into the chat. I'll try to answer it as soon as possible. So this is something which is very important, and we all have to agree on that. The breach is everyone's problem. If we are working in an organization and that organization is actually, part of some, malicious activity, and the breach has happened, of course, it's not the organization which has been breached. It is the trust of the customers. It is the trust of the employees. It is the reputation of the employees are also getting breached at the same time. Okay, so breach is not a responsibility of the security team, or the responsibility of security team not only to protect the organization. This is something we have learned, and we are keep on learning this as part of the security awareness training, or probably we can say the HR training that's are being scheduled, correct? Don't click on the phishing emails. Don't do this. Keep your password strengthening. Do not really enter, your email ID, work email ID on these forums, correct? Do not install any application which doesn't have a good reviews, or if it's newly launched on the App Store and so on. Why all this awareness is being given to the employees? Because the hackers, or probably in today's, we can say the bad guys are really smart. they are targeting the weakest link in the organization to target any organization. And that weakest link in the first priority of there is to identify the human chain working within the organization. And how do they really identify those weak chain is via giving them a phishing email, giving them some benefit, saying, "Hey, if you click on this, you will be getting the X amount of money. You will be winning this lottery, and you have been nominated for so and so prize or reward money. Click on this link to claim your reward," and so on. So breach is not something that only security team has to be taken care. It has to be a joint responsibility to the entire organization, and that's where it is the everyone's problem. And if that's the mindset that organization is having, of course, there are very highly likely chance that there is no breach which is happening. But still, considering security is purely depends on three things: what is the process that organization is following, how's the peoples are really being used in the organization, and then the technology that is being used. When it comes to the technology, okay, none of the technology, considering you are having the best of breed of solution, you have the best of breed of processes, but still you cannot assure the security 100%, right? And there is a famous professor who is giving a lot of he has given a lot of theses around the security and the defense, and how you can create the architecture which is immutable and so on. As per him, you cannot really achieve the security unless you switch off all the devices in your data center and then keep them safe in and buried in the concrete bunker. So what I mean is, if we are expecting that we plug in all the latest technology, we have the cyber intelligence tool, we have the tools which are defendable to any sort of cyber attacks, and learning about AIs and so on, still you cannot really assure the 100% security, okay? Because that's not the reality. So if you have to achieve the 100% security, you have to go offline. And that's not the solution now, because we are working in a digital world. Our government is now initiating, or already has taken a lot of initiative, where they want to power entire government infrastructure online. They want to have entire infrastructure online so that the public can take the benefit, correct? The common man take the benefit out of it. The private organization, although they were earlier in the game or earlier in the game of the digitalization, but they again have the services now releases likes of UPI, the innovation that India has done for the payment ecosystem, where each small vendor or even a common man is using that infrastructure to transfer the payment to the somebody's bank account, or doing the transaction on the retail stall to buy something, right? So that's the innovation we are in the India. And considering to turn off that in the technologies, then that's not the probably future we are looking for. So what we have to do is we have to understand this concept from the deeply manner, and understand what are the consequence can it could be, correct? So there is nothing like absolute security. If somebody is claiming, or some vendor is claiming, yes, this is an absolute security you will gonna get, then it's a false commitment. Okay, as a security practitioner, as a security guy, or as a security CISOs, or a background in the security or a network, we can simply claim that there are loopholes, and that loopholes can't be fulfilled, correct? The only thing which we can achieve via any product, any technology, any process is the comfort level of the security, which will give us some comfortability, but it won't be 100%. And always security comes with a cost. So when and as we are in an organization and we are working, and every organization has certain budgets, correct? And we have to, as in CISO or as a CTOs or as a security administrator, we have to timely inform our organization about the security budget that we need for the year. So the more budget you have, the more comfortable that you have. And that's the right rule in the security. Either you spend before breach happen, or either you double the cost of the spending after the breach happens, correct? So decision is yours. If you want to probably pay 2x after something happens, or you want to probably minimize that budget and you want to spend it before something happened to the organization. Uh, this is a good one. The third largest economy in the world. I'm sorry, the animation didn't work, but if you look at the third largest economy, it's not China. It's not Japan. It's not Germany. It's not India. The third largest economy in the world is the hackers. Okay, The 684.9 million an hour is the spending that is happening around the breach. Okay, so some organization got breached, now they have to pay ransom. Some organization got breached, they have to pay a ransom, correct? So 190K dollar per second is somebody is paying to these hackers as part of the data that they are capturing. Okay, so it's going to be first economy in the world by 2030, and that's the prediction that is there by the consultants, correct? So a lot of organizations are doing the research how, and this money is something which is being tracked, which is being disclosed by the organization. This we have paid this amount of money to the hacker group 1 or hacker group 2 or hacker group 3. However, there are small vendors who are still not disclosing that they have been breached and they paid ransom to recover their data and so on. So if you look at this number, the I and today if we're talking correct on this topic, I won't really surprise the first economy in the world is actually the cyber attackers. So that's the amount of money that these guys are picking up from the different organization while just breaching their data security or an application and getting into their environment, and then taking out the sensitive information and then selling it on the internet. So there are two motivation that hackers has or the bad guys has, and that's where you're gonna see a lot of motivational attackers groups are available online today, and there are a lot of attackers group are available on the dark web also, which are targeting the large organization. The motivation is always a money. Okay, it's not a fame. It is not a they want to showcase anything to the world. It's the money that they have. So after every breach or during every breach, what they do is they disclose the data of the company or the organization or individual. What they are really capturing is they are selling it on the dark web. I'm not sure if you have heard of different breaches which has happened. So if you look at these breaches from the India, bot has lost their 7.5 million customer data. Okay, and this data was sold online on the dark web. And same thing happens to the telecom department. 750 million users data was leaked. Okay, and that's huge data, 1.8 terabyte of data that was leaked. And this was again available online for the purchase. So you can go and you can say, I need the maybe top 100 users database. You put a bid and you'll get the data out there, correct? Then, of course, there was a Hyundai motor which had a bug on their application, and they again disclosed the personal data of the customer for the vehicle owners, who really purchased the Hyundai vehicles from last 15 years. And then, of course, the most sensitive data breach that has happened, of course, the organization. So these incidents are pretty. I'll say it's common, correct? Every day we are seeing one or other organization. It's a government, it's a private, it's the international, or it's the MNC. Even the technology organization likes of Microsoft, they are also not left behind from these breaches. And that's where I still go to the first slide that I presented. It's a joint responsibility and it cannot be 100%. Okay, but yeah, there are certain countermeasures that we can do which can minimize the impact. Okay, now what we think, okay, and this is the reality that we are in. Everybody knows about it that we started the journey and we started, hey, you know what, I have launching a business. Okay, maybe take an example of any business. He's saying, "Hey, I'll go and I'll build something on the cloud, and I'm gonna reside my application in a single cloud." Okay, so that's the thought process every organization has started with. So when they were in data center, every organization started, okay, this is my wall of boundary that I've created, and I'm gonna reside everything, my cloud join, my application, my data within this data center. Then the concept of DR came in. They have to then look for the alternative, correct? They have to see, okay, how I can have two infrastructure which is handling my data. Then the concept of public cloud came in 2010 and later. People or organizations started about the public cloud. Then we had to build the third, boundary wall for the same data that we were handling earlier on-prem. Now we started pushing data towards the public cloud. And that time, of course, single public cloud was the famous, correct? And maybe few of the services which was being adopted from one of the cloud. But if you look at today, where we are standing, the world is moving towards the multi-cloud. Some people are saying, an organization are saying, hey, you know what? I have a good analytics engine which is available in GCP. So I adopted GCP for the analytics power that this provide. I have a compute engine which is coming from AWS because they are cheaper in providing the compute engine. In Azure, we use the AD and we use some of the services which is purely Microsoft services, and therefore we have Azure in the path. And then I'm still relying on my data center for my, the branch connectivities. I have co-location where I'm getting its service from one of the third-party provider. My security comes from there, and I'm building my private cloud. And since I'm a retailer, my organization is using edge computing so that my user experience will be higher. Correct? So the thought process when we started, or any organization started the business, it was limited to securing a single wall or a single boundary. Probably one device or one pair of device was enough, and that's where the journey of firewall or probably parameter security really started. But then when we ended up, spinning a lot of infrastructure, gaining more of services, and transitioning our way of communicating from web application to the APIs to the different services being introduced within the application journey, we are actually now sitting on a ball of fire. And this ball of fire is something which is very hard to protect. And every single organization is struggling how they can really put a controls there in order to protect the ball of fire that they have built. And this was the priority of the organization because they wanted to speed up the delivery of application. They wanted to speed up or provide the agility to their business. They wanted to showcase the word that we are the most innovative organization. But end of the day, if you look at this entire journey, what they have really done, you might have put a best of breed control on your data center to protect your data security, your application security, your parameter security, endpoint security. Now, the moment your load has been shifted from data center to AWS or Azure or maybe Ali Cloud or colocation, the same vendor doesn't really support you throughout the journey because he might not be ready to support you on public cloud. He might not be ready to support you on your edge location sites that you have built. He might not be ready with the app modernization that you have done. You converted your monolithic apps to the microservices based app, right? Now, what do you have to do? In that case, you are going towards a different solution on a different parameter. So your data center might be running a hardware-based solution where AWS, Azure are giving the native services of their own. And your edge and private cloud might be having some other services. So for you as an organization, it become a different game altogether. Your security organization has to manage 5 different solutions. You need a skill set. And that's where in every forum, every year, what we are seeing is the first gap that any organization has today is the right skill set in the security or application security. Because there are a lot of innovation happening towards the infrastructure, then there is a lot of innovation that is happening towards the securities tools also. Okay. And therefore, this gap is increasing day by day. The second challenge, okay, I have 5 infrastructure. I have to manage the security of 5 different infrastructure, but I am a healthcare organization, for an example. The law of land for me is one that I have to comply against the HIPAA. Now, the solution which is in data center is mature enough to support the HIPAA compliance, but my infrastructure too and security devices installed there is not even supporting the HIPAA as in policy. How would I really comply to the compliances there? Then it's a serious program for the organization because if they're not complying to the compliances, they have to pay the penalties. They have to compromise their security measures, correct? The third challenge that comes again with this ball of fire is the modernization of application because my team was well versed with the monolithic architecture. Now I have gone with the APIs based architecture. My data has grown multifold. How I'm ensuring this data is being protected at different territories that I have found, correct? So this is the real challenge that organizations are really struggling with today. So, with all these things, why the application security? Okay, why it is really important? Okay, because applications, if you think about any application today, and we start our journey by applications only, correct? So, in the morning when we wake up, we need a phone to wake us up. because there is an alarm application which is installed on the phone. And the moment the alarm, buzz in, what we do, we silent it and we opens our Outlook or Facebook or Insta or WhatsApp or whatever, the messaging application that you have or favorite messaging application that you have or news application that you have. Again, we are relying on application to tell what's happening in the world. Then we are going to the office in our smart car, playing, the all that songs or maybe Spotify, using Spotify or Alexa or whatever it is. Again, we are relying in the application. In office, you are using tons of application built by your organization to expedite your work. Then coming back to home, again, there are applications surrounded you, which are, giving you flexibility to do your work. So our days start with application and our days end with the application. And this application, okay, the more data that you're going to provide to it, the more customized it has. It will work for you. Like an Alexa, like a chat GPT. If you're pulling it more information about yourself, you will be getting the more custom result. And that's what we are seeing in now retail-based businesses, correct? Amazon now know what you really wanted to buy, what you were really searching for in Google, correct? And therefore it comes with the suggestion. Whatever you search last item, even though you are doing or searching something work related, it will still pop up with the best deal available with the product that you have searched maybe last day or last minute or last hour, correct? So it collect a lot of intellectual properties of yourself, which is keeping the recommendation, which is matching with your interest. Okay. So therefore, application security more important for any organization, because now organizations started collecting the IPs data, intellectual properties data of the individual being, and therefore it become more. I'll say the important for them to keep this information safely, so that in a breach they'll not disclose this information about the user. There are a lot of applications, or I'll say the 99% of application that is being told, built today is going on the internet. Okay. And that's where it's become critical for them to protect the organization, to protect the applications. Because earlier there was a closed bracket we were living in. There was no application which was going live. People were working from the offices. Now we are in a hybrid culture. We are in a work from home culture. We are even working for organizations which are not even located within India territories, correct? I have seen people who are working for US or Europe based customer, and they never been visited to US or Europe. They are still supporting them from the India, correct? So you're working in an interface world, internet connected based world where everything is available online. Okay. Third thing, the regulations are now being strong. Beat any business model. Now India has luckily our own data protection law. So we have now regulations enforced, and these regulations are highly, highly monitored, and there are a lot of penalties that has been formed, and therefore become necessity organization to follow this. And of course, the reputational laws. Okay, so nothing can be hide today. So even if a small organization is getting impacted with the data breach, either the hackers group itself, because most of the hacker groups are now available online. Okay, they are disclosing what they're going to target next and how they're going to target next, and if the target is being successful, they also publish it, because they also have to make money. They have to sell the data that they have stolen from organization X. And if organization X is not interested to retain the data because they have a backup available, they started to sell it on the internet, because the effort that they have put to collect this data, or because they also have to pay for 1.8 terabyte of storage. If let's suppose that the size of data they have copied from organization X, now in order to maintain that, the storage cost, they also have to pay to the storage vendor, correct? So therefore, how they are recovering the storage cost via selling this data on the internet. So one or other way, we are get to know about that. This data is available, and the motivation is of course money. So nobody can hide that they have breached, and they do not want to disclose it. So that's not the reality today, right? And over 70% of the attack against a company, the source of that attack is the applications. Okay, and that's the reality. It's not something which is told by one consultant group. It is being told by everyone that the highest amount of attacks that is happening today, it's happening on the app layer, because that's the first or foremost thing which is exposed to the internet. You are not exposing your server directly. What you are exposing is the page which is hosted on that server. You are buying all the gadgets of security today. If you're probably gonna focus on it, why you buying the firewalls, why you're buying the WAF, why you're buying the load balancer, why you're buying the the API protection or APIs gateway. The centralization of the entire cyber security budget is not to protect the network, it is to protect the application, because that's the core of any infrastructure today. Okay. So what the change that has happened, everybody is knowing this term, the most abused term of the digital transformation, right? So what this digital transformation really brings in, it brings in a lot of opportunities, because now the organizations or the organizations, or you can say the startup, which is the new buzzword in India market, they can reach out to the D2C, which is direct to customer, correct? They have reachability to the end customer. Players like bot, correct? They are not into the distributorship. They can directly reach out to the customer. Any website today, you named Amazon, you name Flipkart, or you name any of the online platform, whether it's a UPI, you do not need a middle layer, which eliminating the entire this middle layer, correct? So you have a direct reachability to the customer with help of the digital transformation that companies really planned for. So this digital transformation is nothing, is to enable your infrastructure that can be 100% modernized, and it has the some mechanism to connect with your customer directly. It can be an application, or it can be any web form, or it can be a mobile device based application, or a post machine, and so on, correct? So this digital transformation came up with certain opportunities for the organization. You can say the improved customer experience. When the payment digital transformation happen, we see innovation in the UPI, we see innovation in the card, where you do not really have to go to the branch to take out the money, or transfer the money from one account to another account. It transformed the business. We see there is a revenue growth because the consumer has increased. Okay, when we were into the game of a retail organization, which was more on store base, versus now, which is an online, we see there is a different revenue stream that has been introduced altogether. It actually transformed the entire business. And that becomes the differentiate, correct? So now, if I'll tell you the lab test, which is happening in India, it's not happening on the site. The 70% or more than 70% tests are now happening on the online app-based system, which means it really differentiates. So players like Tata 1mg, players like Apollo Pharmacy, they are the major contributor to the test results. Okay. So it actually differentiate how you're modernizing your app, how you're adopting the digital transformation. It really differentiate your business model against the competition that you have. Now the old model of business is started killing, correct? The lab-based test, which is open in some the street, they might not see that amount of the customer versus the online platform that are seeing. So it's clearly differentiator. The apps is winning the game. The digital transformation is the winning the game. But what are the challenges, correct, that it brings? Of course, IT is enabler here. So therefore, you need an application, and you need to again think about the security of it, because you are doing a lot of innovation. You are hosting yourself on platform. You are capturing all that personal information, and then you probably know that, since if I'll talk about the example of health record only, if that health record is being stolen, which means you are actually giving this sensitive information about your user to the hackers, like how's his health really look like, what is the medical history that this user has, and so on. And you won't believe, there is one of the reputed, the app which hosted the results on a S3 bucket. Okay. So now that S3 bucket URL, when you click on view report, you will be able to see that URL is a Amazon URL from the S3 bucket, and that URL doesn't require any authentication. So if you share that report or that S3 URL with anyone, he can see your report, your entire health inside, without even any authentication. And that's the scary part of the every industry. No, I'm not talking about healthcare specifically. That's the scary part of the every industry which is going with the digital transformation, because they might have gone with the digital transformation because the innovation really demand, the market was really demanding, but what they forget is the security, and that's where it become the major challenge there. Modernization, we are talking about the app modernization, we are talking about the infrastructure modernization. Now the team or the infra or the skill set that the organization had, that was around the traditional architecture. Getting into the modernization require a lot of investment, and that's again become the a lot of complexity. Okay, that's open up a lot of complexity. How infrastructure will gonna look like, how and which particular, the infrastructure or a hyperscaler will gonna support it, and what is the cost that's gonna be there. Okay, so these are the three challenges which comes with the digital transformation. Okay, now, the shift, what has happened is pretty evident. Okay, so if you see the left hand side is the world that we were living in. We were into the monolithic app. We were creating the VMs, and these VMs was something which was mapped to a single application and a single functionality, correct? And if I have to host a database layer, a application layer, a web layer, I probably was creating three different VMs versus the microservices based application where I do not really need this three bulky VMs. I can have a container ecosystem and that can serve the load for me. Okay, so monolithic has now become the microservices. The single DC provider, as we talk about, has become the multi cloud and edge computing. And the network based communication, the HTTP, has now become the API based communication, because all this communication, all these apps, all these containers, they are not talking to the form of HTTP. They are talking to the form of REST APIs or gRPC because they are lightweighted. They'll fetch the data faster. Okay. And therefore, there is no dependency of stateful. There is no dependency of that. It has a limit of carrying this amount of data and so on, because we need the faster response. Therefore, the protocol also has to be, pretty faster there. So this transformation has happened entirely when we are talking about the digital transformation. Okay. And with this, of course, we are now not only limited to the parameter security. And since there is a transformation happen, we started talking about the application firewall instead of the web firewall, or instead of the network firewall. The new jargons has come. I need a web application firewall in my architecture. The jargons like API security or the technology like API security become real. Organizations now started realizing that I need a dedicated API security solution, because my half of the application now consuming APIs in some or other form. I have a direct integration with my partner ecosystem over an API. I'm using financial services from Paytm or maybe PayU or Bharat Pay using the APIs. So API security become the real game for any organization which are leveraging the services or giving it as a service. Identity is become more and more, I'll say, the challenge for the organization. Correct? How to maintain the identity, which identities to map to which particular infrastructure, and how I can governance or provide the governance around the identity. IEM become a real challenge for the organization, and there's a dedicated solution that has to be put on. Bot mitigation. We talk about the importance of bot in security, but there are attackers which started targeting organizations using the bot attack, which was unidentified by the network infrastructure or app protection that you have put on, which absolutely become all of together a separate solution. DDoS protection and cloud security. Okay, and of course, in the regulatory and compliance, data privacy is now become a hot topic in every organization. Despite India has its own local law now, but still data privacy before that also was becoming a hot topic because of the regulatories requirement, because of the different infrastructure, mighty compliances, you can say, has enforced, and there are a lot of headroom was given to the organization to complying as those compliances. Cyber insurance is becoming very possible, and a lot of organization now, in order to save their money, they are going via the cyber insurance, and domestic and global compliances. Now, quickly, I'll cover what are the major challenges faced by the CISOs. We talk about all that innovation that is happening, and there are certain challenges. Now, as a CISO, okay, since you are also sitting on a ball of fire, you have all this infrastructure to protect. and you know that your law of land is one. Either it's a HIPAA, it's a PCI-DSS, it's a GDPR or whatever. So what will be your preference when you are finalizing a security solution? The first preference that you have, whether I'm running a traditional application or I'm into a modern application, I'm on AWS or Azure or data center, I have to have a consistency around my security policy. If I'm saying the cross-site scripting has to be protected, or my bot protection has to be enabled, or my the e-skill injection has to be done, or my PCI compliance has to be enforced, the policies, it has to be consistent across all the infrastructure that I have. It shouldn't be the game that I'm running policy version 1 on my on-prem, policy version 2 on my AWS, policy version 3 on my Azure. And that's where you are actually behind the game of digital transformation, because the first rule of digital transformation is improving the user experience. Now, if you are not having the consistency around the infrastructure in terms of the policies and the configuration, what are you going to compromise? The first thing you're going to compromise is the user experience, because he can access maybe some part of the web page on AWS, but he's not able to access the another part of the application which is hosted on-prem, because it is sticking in some false positive alert on your security device, correct? So consistency in the security is the first and the foremost priority of every CISOs. Second thing, APIs are becoming the real nightmare for every organization, because in the essence of the growing their business or integrating with a different system, getting a benefit of the cost, or maybe for an example of an SMS gateway, correct? Most of the organization now subscribe to the SMS gateways because they want to generate an OTP. They want to do the dual factor authentication for their user who are logging to their platform. But now attackers has become more smart that they are abusing the APIs which has been integrated with the SMS gateway of the third party organization. And therefore, your billing on the SMS gateway is increased. The number of user, the genuine user who are coming and actually accessing the platform is maybe 100, but you are ended up paying the bill for the 10,000 user, because rest 9,000 user was the bot user. They just came in and abused the functionality of APIs and able to generate a fake OTP alerts using the SMS gateway, giving some random number, mobile number there, correct? So the modern apps, APIs and abuse of APIs protection is becoming a real challenge. And that's where the second concern of the CISOs are. How to protect the abuse of APIs, how to provide the coverage. And before that also, the first major challenge is how many APIs do I have in my infrastructure? And that question is nobody can answer confidently. Even the organizational, mature organization like of Microsoft and so on, or a small organization who has just started, they cannot really say that these many APIs that I'm running in my infrastructure, because most of the time, this part is being offloaded to the third-party developers or an in-house developer, and that developer is also doing the copy and pasting of the code from the GitHub repos or maybe some third-party repositories, and that repository may be built 200 different APIs, but you only see one which is workable in your environment, and you're saying, okay, this particular code will allow access to this application, it will execute this business logic, correct? But in the underneath infrastructure, the same code is having 20 different APIs, which is a shadow in the nature, correct? So therefore, it becoming a major challenge for CISOs to identify those shadows APIs, or you can say the shadows assets within the organization. The third challenge, okay, continuously scaling the defense with the AI and data and the connected intelligence. So we are now in the journey of AI. We are talking about a lot of AI innovation. We are talking about a lot of things that is being driven with the AI. How the tool that you are finalizing, how the infrastructure that you have built can scale, first of all, because when we are talking about AI, we are talking about terabyte or petabyte of the data, because that you have to inject to your RAG, you have to inject to your LLM model so that you can train your business logic to this language model that you are building or you have adopted from the third party. So you need a scale, and that scale that you are introducing in your data, again, your defense has to be in the same scale. Okay. It shouldn't be the case that in the infrastructure you have a scale of 5 petabyte to handle the data, but your security solution on the parameter or the app which is protecting this data is not even at the scale of the data that you have. Then again, you are becoming a bottleneck there. The second thing, the innovation that you're bringing in, the innovation has to be also in line with the security investment that you have done. It shouldn't be the case you're introducing an AI chatbot, but you are still relying on the traditional security controls, which is last generation of WAF or last generation of AP security and so on. And you have not introduced the AI gateways and AI security there, correct? So that has to be in connected intelligence, which should have in feed coming in and telling you, hey, this is something which is wrong, or this is something that has to be implemented and so on. Okay. This is an example like where we are heading now. So earlier we were in the journey of there was an keyword like a script kiddie, correct? A script kiddie was the guy who was just not knowing what he's doing, and he was copying and pasting something from the online portal and just executing against the organization. So let's suppose when I was in my the early days of education, and the subject came ethical hacking, network communication. That time, what we used to do, whatever is written in the book, we used to read it, and then I used to try it on google.com because that was the famous domain in 2010 and 11. There was not much domains available and not known to us, correct? Yahoo, MSN, all these things were available. So we used to do practices on these online domains, okay? But now, what has happened is, even though you do not have any background, you don't know any impact of those, the commands that you're running, you can still be able to get the things from the chat GPT, correct? So for an example, in my screenshot, if you see the vulnerability scanning, correct? You have to just tell your intention. I want to make this particular application down, or maybe it can be a straightforward. It has to be, of course, in a different version altogether, because prompt engineering is something that now being addressed by a lot of chatbot engine likes of chat GPT and Microsoft Copilot. But still, you can use a lot of intelligence around there, and you can confuse the chatbot to provide the output that you really require from them, correct? So like one of the example is the user requested that I want to do the scanning for my infrastructure and against the vulnerabilities, correct? And ChatGPT produce a script which can be copy and pasted against any infrastructure. And you can see you have to just fill in the host name, and you'll be able to scan the specific infrastructure against the vulnerabilities. So that's the scary world that we have. Might be this command is not known to the most of the guys or security guys or hackers, but ChatGPT will opens the door for them to understand them this concept more deeply and tell you exactly what this command is gonna do and what it's gonna scan for. And you don't have to put your learning, correct? You don't have to put your mind browsing through 20 different concepts or 20 different books to get to know about why this command and how this command really works. Second thing, phishing emails, correct? Again, the input was given about the phishing emails for the year-end bonus, and that was really articulated well by the ChatGPT. So no-brainer. Like you don't have to really put any brains there in order to get to know about what's you really need, and it can be easily be done by the automated tool which are coming in, correct? So, in a solution for the app security specifically, the coverage, what you need is you need the consistency. As we talk about the CISO priorities, is the consistency. Either it's a mob app, it's a modern app, or it's a monolithic app. It has to be a far to your network or within your network. So, if you are running a multiple of the edge location, multiple of the data center, multiple of the cloud, you definitely don't want to put every security control within the parameter. You want a security control which will filter something and give you a clean data, whereas you can manage it from centrally, correct? So the solution has to have this property which can create the policies once and it can be reused for the entire infrastructure that customer is having. Or it also help you to reduce the cost. The far you are putting the security in, the more benefit you are getting, because then you are actually getting a lot of benefit of the bandwidth utilization. Because if the DDoS attack is happening, let's suppose, and you have a DDoS solution deployed within your parameter, the traffic has to be processed by the infrastructure within your bandwidth that you have purchased, within the capacity of the device that you have purchased. And if it is large in the scale, it's definitely going to impact your infrastructure, your bandwidth, as well as the services or availability of your the data center or the cloud that you have. Versus if you're buying a DDoS solution on the cloud, which is far and from you, the cloud has a certain more capacity than the hardware, correct? Because it is a shared model of the DDoS. It has no relationship with the ISP that you have, because you're gonna publish your routes towards the cloud DDoS, and therefore it becomes their responsibility to consume their own bandwidth, which is definitely higher than the bandwidth that you have. So your protection will not be compromised, even though the DDoS attacks in the terabytes or the petabytes. And that's where we are seeing in the news that so and so organizations stop petabytes of attacks or terabytes of attacks on the cloud POP that they have built and so on. So solutions which are heavy or bulky in the nature, it has to be far from the infrastructure, which have to take the bulk of the traffic. The solution which are niche, likes of API security, likes of API discovery, likes of the web application firewalls, that has to be close to your application, because there you are actually doing the the sanitization of the packets, opening up the payload, the sensitive information which is residing, that has to be close to the infrastructure that you're in. Second thing, the APIs, as I mentioned, correct? So APIs are not the game only for the microservices. And this is a myth that organizations are having, that I'm not running a microservices, therefore I don't have the APIs. So APIs can be form of a monolithic architecture also. So I was meeting one of the customer, and the same language he used, that we are still hosting our applications on Windows IS, and we don't use any APIs. I said, sir, can I have a look on the IS server that is in the question or we are discussing? And when I log in, I see there was different virtual directories that was being, and few of them were named as APIs itself. Okay. And I showed it to the CISO. I said, sir, see, this is the reality. Even though you're using a Windows IS, which is a web server, still there are possibilities that you must be using the APIs, because they are not dependent. That if you're running a microservices, of course, the APIs become more relevant. But if you are still on monolithic, you can still use the API. API don't say if you're running monolithic, I'll not work there. It's just a method. It's a method of communication. Your database might be integrating with your web server using an API method rather than a ODBC connectivity, correct? So APIs can be anywhere in the network. APIs can be anywhere in the architecture. So protection against the APIs is something where you should know what is the baselining that you want to build. And the baselining can always happen when you have the visibility around it. So all the things that we are talking about has to have a visibility in terms of what needs to be protected. And if your developers, as I mentioned, which most of the case doesn't have the visibility, because in a lifespan of an organization, you're gonna see the developers is the only job which is being replaced very rapidly. Okay, so you will see a developers join, and within a year or 2 year, he's switching the organization, because it's very dynamic. Sorry, yeah, it's a very dynamic job, correct? Because of the traction, because of the innovation that this job really introduced, and most of the time they are working on third party contract. So what somebody has built, of course, they do not really want to disclose it to the another person, because of he's done that hard work. Now probably he'll say, why should I disclose that I use this logic to build this API? And that's the competition there in the DevOps market. Okay. So visibility of APIs can be gained via a different, yeah,
Do not disturb me. In case call
yeah,
आपको नहीं दिख रही है,
via the different tools and the different dev cycles that are there. And it's not again rely on the single infrastructure. It has to go with the the all the defense or the protection that's there. Third thing, the AI and data intelligence, correct? Whatever we talk about, correct? The API security or anti-bot or a DDoS or maybe web app firewall, it has to take the feed. It has to have its own intelligence about the latest attack, the attacks which are pretty common, the attacks which are emerging, the attacks which has a potential to impact your infrastructure, correct? So if we are still relying on a signature-based devices, if we are still relying on saying, hey, okay, I have maybe this signatures which can protect my infrastructure, and this is true. Like most of the organization now started thinking towards the open source projects. They are implementing open source project. For an example, the WAF. Okay, the open source WAF use the mode security framework, and this security framework is available on the GitHub. So if you are building your own WAF today, you can easily consume the mode security framework and build your own WAF. But what happened about the signature? Because WAF to work on the signature as well as it has to work on the behavior. And 90% of the vendors today, they use the mode security underneath in the WAF technologies. Okay. So which means you are still relying on the signature, which are already disclosed to the public as part of the GitHub repo. So any intelligent hacker who got to know, hey, you're running a mode security, I know you have maybe 1,000 signature or 1,200 signature, and this is what is written in the signature. He can easily trace down your application and evade into your application security and get into your data, which is stored, okay, behind that application. So before buying any tools, always think about if you're buying or investing in the right tool. It is an open source space or it is a vendor itself has invested into the technology. What is the R&D of that vendor? Whether he is just talking about on the paper or it's really the things that are there. So R&D plays an important role building in project, correct? So that's the one thing you should always be checking the investment that organization is doing towards R&D and building in project. And of course, AI now become an integrated, I'll say, the thought process within the tool. So how mature the tool is and how its machine learning algorithm, again, it's open source machine learning or it's the a vendor built machine learning algorithm that is using, and how this data is being correlated, correct? There might be a case where saying, hey, we use the ML based language, but what exactly they're doing with the ML? They might not be processing the right set of data where the false positive will be higher, correct? Which tuple they are picking up in the tools to correlate against the ML, and what output which is expected has to be known to the organization before proceeding with such solutions. So, app security posture control, there are 5 different posture control. One, which prevent you from the app exploitation, which prevents you from the automated attack, which prevents and discover your APIs, which prevents your app infrastructure, and last but not the least, the abuser, okay, the fraudster, the use case like account takeover. So if we have a adequate controls around these 5 pillars, I'll say you are still not 100% sure on your application security, but you have a decent level of coverage around the application security posture that you have built. Okay. And this is where the innovation, this is where the shift that has happened. And if you think down the line, 10 year or 15 year before, what we used to have in our entire infrastructure is a firewall only, correct? The firewall which was serving us the entire thing. But now if we think about security, we need at least the firewall with these controls also, okay? And these tools also. And this can't be clubbed into a single tool. This has to be a pointed solution, correct? And that's where the complexity is really heading. How are we going to maintain? How are we going to do about this, right? So that's the minimum security posture control for an application. uh, I'll skip the functionality because if you look at this, the preventing app security posture, we are talking about the attacks like SQL injection, correct? Or the attacks like cross-site scripting, how somebody can invade into the application using these two, which are the famous among top 10 OAPs categories. But how somebody can evade into your application security, correct? And there are various methods available. So there are tons of method available online, and even ChatGPT will give you so many hints about it. But if you are following OWASP as an organization, OWASP, they release the top 10 attacks that is happening across the world on the application. Okay, so they release every 3 year that this is the top 10 attack that has happened from last 3 year on the application, and organizations are following that practice to at least block those 10 attacks so that they'll coverage at least what is non-devil, okay, what has happened in the past, so the history will not be repeated. And as part of the OEP's top 10, you will see those 10 attacks has a multiple combination. So cross-site scripting, for an example. So I was reading a research paper. There was again one of the famous professor in the security. What he said is within the cross-site scripting, there are 500 different permutation and combination. So one of the method which I am seeing, showing it on the screen, but there are 500 different way that you can do in order to, execute a cross-site scripting. And that 500 method was written in his article. Okay. So of course, we for an information, it's a single attack. But how this attack can be, permutation and combination with the 500 different technique is a length and breadth that solution has to understand. Same with the SQL injection. The simplest way that you are actually, injecting something as part of the SQL query to the forum, and that form accept it and, provide you with the data. But how many combination that you can make with the queries? Because SQL is a vast language. It might be having 20,000 different commands that SQL really understand. Now, which command that you want to form, which is not controlled by your security device, correct? It might be, the security tool is capable to, probably inspect about the command which is famous or which is very much predictive. But what about the help command? Maybe somebody is able to get the information from the help command and get into your infrastructure, which nobody can think of. None of security device really think of. Because when we run the SQL injection attack, we need to figure it out where this particular thing is located and what is the value out there. So where and the value are the two common denominator in most of the SQL injection attack. What about if somebody is using an help command there, correct, to get the data out? So these permutation and combination is very important, and therefore the behavioral and the length and breadth of signatures that device is having is really important, correct, for the web exploitation. And same for, of course, session hijacking, which is the sixth OEP's top 10 attack, and the security misconfiguration, which is again the top 5 attacks of OEP. So I'm covering top 4 OEP's top 10 as part of this stack. Security misconfiguration again remain the top because most of the time, as I mentioned, we are downloading a library, okay, rather than designing the code by ourselves. We are downloading a code from the GitHub, or maybe the developers use a library. Now that library is not being scanned, correct? So if let's suppose Python has a library, PyTorch, the PyTorch has itself 20,000 lines of code in it. You're just importing a single keyword, PyTorch, because you want to probably build your own LLM language or SLM language model. But what is written in that library, how that library is really impacting your security posture is totally unknown by you. So it's an important what exactly you are pulling in from the internet and what you are writing in the code is one of the is the concern area. And then of course identity and the access management become more relevant here in the identity based attack. Mitigating the bot, the device has to have the intelligence, not only who is coming in, it should have an intention of the user. It should have a behavioral pattern of the user. Like if I'll talk about browser fingerprinting, it's for say browser fingerprinting is which browser it is coming from. But how do you really identify a browser? Is it only the mechanism is looking into the user agent version? That's not correct. Because if I'll talk about only user agent version, I might spoof my user agent version. I might say, hey, I'm still coming from Mozilla, but in user agent version, I'll say I'm coming from the Chrome browser. And that's possible. There are headless browser. There are headless Chrome user agent version. There are Postman where you can spoof the user agent version. There are tools like Sanity MBA. There are tools like the headless Chrome tools. There are Python script available. where whatever user agent version you want to use, you can use that, and you can easily spoof any web request. So if browser fingerprinting is limited to just identifying the browser user agent version and the simplest way of identify browser, then it's a wrong solution. We should have a solution which will look into each parameter of the browser, from not only from the user agent version, but if somebody is really having the right set of font. And I'll tell you why it is important. Okay. So if you probably Google it after this session, how's the emojis look like in a different browser, right? You will find out a Chrome, when we are typing a colon and a the right braces, it print a smiley in the browser, correct? But that smiley is not same in the Chrome browser versus the Mozilla versus the Internet Edge and versus the Safari browser. So each browser publish a different emojis with the same input that is given. So some is having a broader smile, some is having a small smile, and so on. Your font, in fact, is not same in all the browser. So your Chrome support 200 different font sizes and the font languages versus Safari, which is limited to only 100, and Mozilla, which is again very vast, and of course Edge has the highest font supported. Correct. So how many font that is being there in the repository of a browser? So what I mean is the fingerprinting is not just looking into the user agent. There are different parameters that tool has to evaluate in order to claim, hey, this is the right browser that he's claiming from. And apart from the user browser fingerprinting, it should also check the behavior. Whether a user has a behavior that instead of, let's suppose if it is a banking website and I'm a user, what I generally do, if I have to transfer a money, first I always go to the page of checking how much balance that I have in my account, and then I only make the transaction. Okay. Instead of registering a new user, I always first validate the amount that I have. That's my behavior. Okay. And if such tools are there with my banking ecosystem, if let's suppose now I logged in and I'll directly try to add a the add a pay in my account where I have to send the money, probably that behavior is not matching with my past behavior. I should be alerted that you are just adding the pay without looking at the statement or without looking at the balance that you have, or maybe somebody is directly transferring the amount without even trying to see what is the balance which is there, and that failed the transaction. So the behavior pattern has to be there. Okay. Apart from that, of course, header parameters, the timings, the IPNS, and where it is coming from. The last logging was in India. Now it is coming from different location, different ISP also, and so on. So these things are pretty important to identifying and seeing the behavior of the user to classify it as a bot. Okay. And of course, we are seeing it. There is no, introduction required, but we always see like in the the Tatkal booking, we always seeing a lot of times the genuine users are not getting the ticket, and same happen in any of the yes, same happen in any of the the sales which are going on in Amazon for this for the mobile where they're launching a mobile or the cheaper rate. Sorry, I request if you can go on mute, please. Okay, so we have seen a lot of times the genuine users are not getting the ticket, and same happen in any of the the sales which are going on in Amazon where they're launching a mobile or the cheaper rate. So
Sir, you are on mute. You are mute, sir.
sorry, yeah. Yeah, sir. So there are tools available, there are scripts available which help you to, faster the response on the specific website or application that you have. APIs, of course, it has to be automatic. It's not relying on that you are providing any input. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure who is muting me again and again, but yeah. So API abuse is real, and that's something we have been evidently seeing from year on year. And there is a specific architecture which a lot of organization has public. Gartner is one of them. And if you look at this, this is where the actual gist of the security comes in, where you have APIs, you have WAF, you have a browser control, and finally the APIs is being published via a proper access management. Now, generally, if we talk about the security control, we talk about the security control after the everything happened, which is the area when the things are being published, correct? That's where the security comes into the picture. But what is the shift left of the approach with the microservices based architecture or modernized architecture is as soon as you have created the code, the security solution should be able to read what you have written in the code, and it should be able to identify the vulnerability there and there only, correct? The SAST or SCA tools are specifically designed for the such tasks. And when you are in the building phase, since the vulnerability is being identified, you should have a common mechanism to patch those vulnerability. Or you can say the WAF has to be there, part of your build phase. Rather than it will be part of your operational phase, it should be part of your build phase. And finally, when you're going with the testing, you should have a dynamic security assessment tool integrating with your test phase, which will give you what is being left over even after patching, so that when you're actually deploying your application or going live, you have all the security measures already being taken care. So shift left approach security is something that security is not an afterthought. It's a thought which should start as soon as you are starting your application journey. Okay. It's this thought which should be, fixed within your development life cycle. Okay. Uh, Okay, so we briefly talk about the application security. Now, important one. Okay, so when we talk about the data security specifically, there are two sort of flows which comes into the picture. Or when we talk about the application security, one flow where we talk about the north to south traffic, correct? Where the traffic is being moved from the user to the apps, and that's the internet traffic. Okay, and of course, this traffic will comes with the different challenges which we spoke earlier, correct? The DDoS attack, the unwanted, the authentication, and so on. And the solution is also being discussed. The second type of traffic is the lateral movement within the network, which is east-to-west traffic control, correct? There we are talking about more of the visibility side, the APIs traffic, which is within the network, the authentication traffic within the network, sort of application to application traffic, which is within the boundary of the data center only. And maybe you can say you have a data center to cloud, which again comes these towards traffic control. So these positioning of the network traffic required its own treatment, correct? So north to south might not be fulfilled the same requirement what east to west traffic control is really fulfilling, correct? Or security control is fulfilling. So each of the pattern of the traffic required a specific security control to be the insert. And these are a few of the example. Like if I'll talk about from the code to customer journey, which is between a user to the application journey, what are the controls which are required? So if we talk about the infrastructure security, we are talking about the volumetric DDoS protection, network DDoS protection, IP reputational, firewalling, IPsec, and SSL VPN. That comes on the infrastructure layer. And then, of course, DNS and IPS and SSL visibility. The application security is purely on the authentication side of it. It is purely on the protection side of it. And then we are talking about the application management, which comes with the API gateway, the monitoring of application, APM tools, and so on. ADC and rest of things are pretty much, as the name suggested, they are covering its own suite support there. Now, the data security. Okay, so we talked briefly on the app security. Now, what is the data security principle? Okay, what are the data security starting point? And this question you should be asking yourself whenever you are actually accessing the data, whenever you are actually designing anything related to the data security, whenever we are actually doing any integration or merger with any organization or any ecosystem, correct? First thing, as an organization, do we know the critical information asset that we have in our organization, correct? Do we know where they are located? Okay, who own the ownership? And this is very much basic, but this is still not known by most of the organization. Okay, the ownership of the defined on the data, correct? Who really want to access and why he want to access it? And this has been really seeing whenever the data breach happen. In fact, I still remember the Uber has had a breach last year, and the source of that breach was there was a user who left the organization and his credential was still there on the SSL VPN, correct? And somebody really able to find that as the access, and he was able to access the the entire Uber ecosystem. Now you think if that particular user has left the organization, ideally his credential should have been wiped out from the AD or from the devices where he had access to, correct? So do you have the data ownership classified? Do you have the data classification policy? What level of access that somebody should have in the organization is the data security principle. And this has to be in principally approved within the CISOs and within the organization data policies guy or data policy. I'll say the data policy director that we DPD that we have, which should be defining the principal rule on the data classification. Do you know if the assets are adequately protected? Again, we talk about the importance of application security, and application is the core of data, correct? All your data is being accessed by the application only. So do we know whether the protection is being there? We talk on the one layer. Now we're going to talk about the second layer also. Do we know the user sensitivity there? Do we know the monitoring there, that if somebody is doing something, are we getting alert out of it or not? Do we have a business that need to share the data outside? I took the example of different integration, correct? Maybe an integration of Indigo, correct, with the Make My Trip. Now you're filling all the details of the users, like what should be the name of the passenger, the age, the Aadhaar number, and PAN to Make My Trip, and that data is being shared to the Indigo also, because Indigo is the final vendor which will gonna book your flight. Now, both the organizations have your data, correct? Which means Make My Trip is sharing your data to the Indigo. Now, if breach happens at Indigo, do you think that's the equal responsibility of Make My Trip also to secure your data at that layer? So, how you're sharing your data and how you're ensuring the confidentiality of data, and whose responsibility is to maintain that integrity, and what if something happened? What if breach happened? Who will gonna blame to this data breach? Is really a debatable point with the model that we are in today. And finally, do you use monitor uses of the cloud collaboration solution like Box in the mobility? Like how you're really ensuring, correct? Who is contributing to where and what kind of dependency that this particular or these solutions that have. Maybe you're adopting the AWS, you're using RDS, or you're using the S3 bucket there. How this data is being stored? Is it a shared? Is it a dedicated infrastructure? How the replication is being happening within the AWS infrastructure across the different the edge location that they have built and so on. So all these things are pretty much important into the data security starting points principle. Now, what are the principles that you have? Correct. So there are 5 different principles that we have, and this really help organization to make them aware about anything that is happening, and it helps them to retain their data also, because whenever we are designing any data sets or we are using any data set, first thing that always comes to the mind is minimization. Minimization means is what data that somebody really need. Okay, if I am integrating my web application or my app to my data server or my database, what part of the database that my app should have access to? How can I minimize it to the minimum level that only the app can access this partition, and within this partition this information can be retrieved from the database, correct? Minimization is the key concept to secure your data, and minimization comes with the different, I say, the access control. It can be an access control on the IP level where you are blocking the access. Minimization comes on the access level where you are blocking the access to a particular user or a particular device to a particular functionality. So the more granular you will go to the minimization, that's where you're gonna get the higher sensitivity or higher amount of security of your data. The accuracy, data updation is very important. Okay, so data must be accurate and up to the date, because who is accessing the data, when he is accessing the data, what sort of functionality that he is doing with the data, it has to be accurate, it has to be updated. Retention, data should not be retained longer than necessary, and that's a threat for most of the organization. I worked with the organization, financial organization, who had a retention period of 18 months, but there was a tape drive, because it has two policies: the online backup, the offline policies, correct? So online was for 3 months, offline was 1.5 year. Now we had seen the tape which was there in their, the storeroom or a backup room for last 5 year also. So is it a good practice to keep the data for last 5 years? The answer is no, because now you are inviting a threat. If something happens, and maybe it could be a physical breach, security breach, or a logical security breach, then your data will be compromised, which is 5 year long, and the hackers or attackers have more context on your business. So retention policies of the data has to be in line with the business need, has to be in line with the business priority, and it has to be again in line with the security policies, both physical security policies as well as the logical security policies. Accuracy, again, we talked briefly, but accuracy is, data has to be the accurate. And if you think there is an inaccuracy in the data, that has to be erased or rectified without the delay. Because if we are not passing the right information, then again it will lead to the breach. Saying I need the user request, for an example, you have a database which has the information about the 2000 different user, but the data is not accurate. Okay, the mechanism to retain or retrieve this data is not accurate. Now, instead of asking that I need the information about specific user, the platform may ask a query that I need request about Rohit, but in the retrieve of the data from the database, you are not giving information about Rohit, but you're giving the information about Santosh, for an example, correct? Because that's how the indexing of the data is being done. That's how the tabling system of the data is being done. So accuracy of the data and retrieval of the data has to be in line with what it is needed. And the breach notification requirement, a very important, and I'll say now, I guess it is mandate with most of the compliance that you are adhering to, whether it is GDPR or Data Protection Law of India. It is really important that you notify the right stakeholder within the organization, within the timeline, and also outside of the organization also, so that the best can be done. So we have organizations within India available where the breach notification, if you are giving it to them, like CERT as an organization, they are helping you, correct, timely, uh, protecting your infrastructure and giving you the timely support what is required, and so on and so on. There are so many other organizations also. So giving the notification about yes, something is wrong is not a bad thing. It's the proactive way of doing it so that the right measures can be taken again. Now let's talk about the data security solution. So data security solution is four in the categories. Whenever we talk about the data is being stored in the databases. It can be in the form of online storage, again the offline storage, but mostly the online is the one which is requiring the more control because it is available on the network. So anything, whether it is the insider breach or outsider breach, they can have access to the data. Offline, of course, comes under the boundary of physical security. We might not discuss it, but yeah, the online data is something that we have to probably, secure against the different solutions which are available. The first solution is the data classifier. So data classifier is actually tagging your data or classifying your data. How this data really should be treated. Is it a sensitive? It is not a sensitive. It is a public data. It's a private data. And so, like, every organization may have a different definition. The military has a different definition of data classification versus a private organization may have a different, classification of the data, correct? So as per the organization policies, data has to be classified. Second thing is DAM, which is database activity monitor. How this data is being monitor how it is being used and where it is being used is something that is very much important. And then the last thing is the DLP, data leak prevention. Once the data is moving within the network, how you can prevent it against the breach, and then who should have access to the data. So classification, as we talk about, classification has a different meaning. So according to Ministry of Home Affairs, these are the few, the classification. Of course, not entirely, but most of it is there. So top secret, which is, cannot be shared, the secret, which can be shared with some of the officials, confidential, which is interest of the organization, and of course it has, of course, access to the limited people, restricted, which information is essentially meant for the official use only, and which would not be published and communicated to anyone expected for the official purpose, and unclassified, the data which is public in the nature. So this is a best practices that you always label your data so that you know what you are actually releasing to the public, what you are not releasing to the public. DAM on the other side is the database activity monitoring. That does the that actually integrate with your database server that you have and check what changes that somebody is implementing, when he is implementing that change, and what command that he is really executing. Okay, so you have the entire space. Let's suppose a breach happened via an application. You probably be knowing that the user which you have integrated with the application is something who is coming in and accessing this part of the database, which ideally should not be accessing it. Correct. So entire thing can be alert, can be blocked, or you can mask the data also on the real time. And that's now becoming a practice that we are introducing an encryption layer across all the activity that is happening towards the DB or towards the application. DLP, on the other hand, understand the data requirement. Okay, so it again does the classification. It again, you can define your parameters, you can define your syntax, and based on that, you can see what data that you really want to pass, what data you really want not to pass from the organization in form of the web, emails, or maybe from the endpoint FTPs, different communication. DRM, the last tool in the slide talks about the how the access should be given. If it is a partner who is coming and doing some job on your database, what level of access that partner should have? What level of access should IT administrator should have? What level of access should the database administrator should have, and so on. So this again, right management tool does the the proper inspection on the different groups that is being created, how they are accessing, what level of access they should have, and so on. Now there are of course intelligent tool which also gives you the specific policies recommendation also. Okay, what kind of policy recommendation that you should have against the specific user, whether this user has logged in from last 10 days or not, or what kind of directory that it has access, and so on. So that level of intelligence has now been Euro also incorporated in the DRMSN tool. So with this, I guess I've completed my topic for today. I'm happy to have any question from anyone within